Hello and welcome! Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, check out these courses, and enjoy this clownversation!
Hello, welcome everybody to Clownversations today on Thursday, February 24th. It's wonderful to see you here. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to be talking in a few minutes to the amazing and remarkable CAL MCCRYSTAL about his career as a clown and director of physical comedy in many, many different guises. And I'm sure that you all have burning questions for CAL. So if you do, you can just throw them into the comments under the video and I will feed them through into the interview so that you can be involved. So this can really be a clownversation. Welcome. If you're new to the Clown Spirit channel or this sort of Clown Spirit family, you're very, very welcome. My name is Barnaby. I do this every single week. Hi, John. Good to see you there. I talk to amazing leaders in the field of clowning and comedy every single week on Thursdays. So please join me. It's wonderful to have you live and to join in with the conversation. Jusby, hi Jusby from Portland, Oregon, just up the road. Fabulous. Now, if you're new, also please subscribe to the channel. It's really helpful for me and it's a great support for the free things that I do. So just hit that subscribe button underneath the video in YouTube. And if you also click on the notifications, then you won't miss any videos as they come up. Hi, Chad from the Red Nose Factory. Good to see you. And I'm also doing clown reaction videos all the time. And so if you have a clown act or you know of a clown act that you'd like me to react to, just send it along and I'll do a little reaction to it and put it on the YouTube channel. If you look at my YouTube channel, Clown Spirit, you'll see a ton of clown reaction videos there. So yes, and one other quick announcement, have a few more places in my beginners online clown course, which is coming up on March 5th and 6th. That's not this weekend, but the weekend after. It's a 6-hour course, 3 hours on Saturday, 3 hours on Sunday. If you're interested, I've got a few places left. Get in touch and we can sign you up. Okay, so Catfish, hi there. Great to have you. I'm very excited about today's guest because CAL, I've never met CAL before, like many of my guests, but I've known about him for much longer than he's known about me. He is somebody that I came across very early in my theatre career when I was working at a little studio theatre in Leeds, and this amazing company called Peepolykus came a number of times and did shows that were directed by CAL MCCRYSTAL, and I absolutely fell in love with the work. And he since then has just popped up, you know, in all kinds of work that I've seen and admired over the years, with Spymonkey in particular, whose work is fantastic. If you don't know Spymonkey, you need to check it out. I just did a reaction video of them a few days ago. And also, perhaps most excitingly, the awesome Gifford Circus, which is just a marvel. It's an incredible thing. I had Tweedy on a few weeks ago talking about clowning for Gifford Circus, and CAL MCCRYSTAL, who I'm talking to today, has directed 10 shows for Gifford Circus and is really just part of that team. And he's doing another one this year. So I could go on talking about CAL and everything he's done all day. He's worked with Cirque du Soleil. He's worked on the incredibly successful one-man, two Guvnors starring James Corden, which was at the National Theatre and then transferred to Broadway. He's also worked on a bunch of movies, Paddington Bear, Spiderman 2, The Dictator. And yeah, he's just an all-round star of the physical theatre and clowning world. So without any more ado, please welcome to the Clownversation, CAL MCCRYSTAL.
Hi.
Da, 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 da. Hi.
Hi, thanks for that very nice introduction.
You're welcome. You deserved every word of it. It's so lovely to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Where are you today? Tell us where you are and what you're doing.
I'm in a hotel in Liverpool because I'm directing a play a very epic play about a hospital being demolished. It's called The Royal, and it's based on the actual fact of the Liverpool Royal University Hospital, which is going to be demolished. And this is the story about 3 nurses and 2 patients that get stuck on the 8th floor, and nobody knows that they're there, and the wrecking balls are swinging. And it's kind of a classic disaster movie on stage. Think Poseidon Adventure. Think it's a very big theatre in Liverpool. It's called the Royal Court, and they've got great resources, and they put a lot of money into the shows they do, because a lot of the shows sell out, and the theatre do well. So, and they never say no to it. So I've got fireballs exploding up through air vents, and I've got collapsing set, and I've got helicopter, and it's a really epic, amazing show, and it's terribly funny. I say that confidently because this is actually the 2nd revival of this show. We did it about 6 years ago and then revived it again. And post-COVID, it just seemed like everyone loves nurses even more now, so it seemed like a good time to put it back on.
Yeah, right. We've got a different kind of relationship to hospitals, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds amazing. And is it just the cast of 5 then? You said 3 nurses and 2 patients.
Yes. Well, no, there's a dead body in it, and that is actually played by an actor, and so I should say cast of 6. Yeah.
Brilliant. Who gets to play the dead body? That's a pretty fun role.
A young actor who is extremely good and is making his debut at the Royal Court in this production.
Did they have any lines?
No.
That would be good. You could give the dead body a line, just one.
No, they get lots of other really funny things to do, loads and loads.
Right. Are they kind of carried around, and they have to kind of flop and do interesting physical comedy?
Yeah, well, they're alive when the play starts, and then they die during the play.
Right.
And then it's all the stuff that happens with the body after that. I mean, it's a bit of a recurring theme of mine. I like dead bodies, and you mentioned Spymonkey earlier on. One of the shows I did for Spymonkey, the first one I did with them was called Stiff.
Yeah.
And it was set in a funeral parlor.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
There was a lot of mischief with the dead body in that. This is different. This is different business, but it's a funny dead body, so they have that in common.
Yeah, and I just did a reaction to Cooped, a little clip from Cooped, and it's not a dead body exactly, but there's a bit where Toby picks up Petra, and she's completely stiff, and there's a wonderful physical comedy moment where it's kind of like similar.
Yeah. Well, that, in fact, it's funny. Coop was the 2nd show I did with Spymonkey, and because I'd done this scene in Stiff where Aitor Basari, brilliant clown Aitor, was a dead body kind of who kept rolling off the table, I just thought with Coop, let's try something with the opposite of that. So let's have a rigid body thing. You know, when you do your 2nd show with a company, people will come to see that show, and they'll want to see all the kinds of things that they liked about the 1st show, but you want to do different versions of them, lots of new material, but touch on some of the style of the original material, just to keep your well, it helps to brand the company, really, doesn't it? And it helps keep people happy who come along to see certain types of physical comedy.
Yeah, and it seems to be a bit of a hallmark of your career, Cal, that you get invited back multiple times to work with same companies, which must be a good sign. You know, they love working with you.
You know, and I've been inspired a couple of times.
Well, that's good too. That's important.
Yeah, I guess. But no, I love going back and building on the relationships I have with people. This theatre here, the Royal Court, I direct here regularly. And Gifford Circus, which you mentioned, I've been there as director of the productions for 10 years now, and it's the longest association I've had with any company. As a freelance person, it's so luxurious to have a long relationship like that, because it's almost like a day job. And I love doing the shows there. I'm still have lots of ideas about shows I want to do there in the future and stuff. So
brilliant. Yeah, I'm sure it'll continue. I'm sure that association will continue for a long time, because it's a wonderful one. Yeah. Well, let's get into clowning, and I'm really curious to know a little bit more, because there's a basic outline, and your bio is super interesting on your website, by the way. If anybody has a chance to read that, it's quite a revealing bio. I think it's very good read. And so I know a little bit about the early workshops you did and kind of getting into clowning, but I wonder if you could just tell us, for people who are watching, what was that moment for you when you realized that, oh, clown, that's a thing that I want to do? And there's a sort of transition perhaps there.
It was funnily enough, my grandmother used to tell me that when I was 3 years old, I used to say I want to be a clown. She would say, oh, don't be silly, you can't be that, don't be a clown, that's a silly job, be a fireman or something. And then I think when I was in my late 20s, I found an old school magazine where I was at school in New Jersey, and we'd all interviewed each other for this school magazine, and I think I was 7. And one of the questions was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'd said a comedian. And it was very interesting, because I never particularly felt like I was a funny child. I certainly wasn't the funny boy at school. I wasn't the popular one who everybody laughed at. But that was obviously in there somewhere. And I think then when I went to drama school, I went to the Royal Scottish Academy in Glasgow. And when I went there, they would always give me, I remember we did a Greek tragedy, and there was one funny part in it, and I got that. And I just I found some success with those characters, and I wasn't so successful playing the kind of, submarine commander type people. I don't think I was very believable as that. I'm a very light. I think I have a lightness as a performer. And in fact, there was one show I did at it was our final show. We did Titus Andronicus, and we were all swishing about in these togas and things, and everyone at the end of Titus Andronicus gets killed, and I think I was the only one left alive at the end of and I didn't have a big part, but I was the only one left alive, and I was there to pronounce the final line, whatever it was, at the Theatre Royal in Glasgow, and I remember every night I said this line. The audience were horrified that all the blood, and everyone was dead around me and blood everywhere. And I said this line, and the whole house used to absolutely break up laughing as the curtain came. And then the curtain would hit the floor, and all the dead bodies would get up and say, what are you doing? Why are you spoiling it? We're working so hard and you spoil it. And I was going, I don't know. I don't want to be funny. I didn't. And I'm not saying, oh, it's so funny everyone was laughing. I think there is I think there's a problem in that piece, that it's so horrible that there's nothing you can really say at the end that's going to be convincing. And but I just think I don't think I was, and I tried it every which way not to get a laugh, but every night it was the same. But I think that's because I had this lightness that wasn't really suitable for saying that line or something.
Can you remember what the line was?
No.
I'll have to look it up. Somebody look up the last line in Titus Andronicus. They'll put it into the comments, and then you can say it.
Yeah, it'll bring back terrible memories, I'm sure, if I hear that.
Well, speaking of terrible memories, so you talk about work Pierre B Long and then working with Gaulier. Or yes, taking Golier's workshop.
I was I think I was 28 when a friend of mine, my friend Sally Cookson, who's also a director, said, oh, look, I've seen this advert in Time Out, Find Your Own Clown. Shall we do that? And I thought, yeah, and I wasn't working at the time. So I got my 300 quid or whatever it was. And we went along and we did this. And it was really hard, this Pierre B Long, because Pierre's a brilliant teacher. And he demonstrates, he's the opposite of Gaulier in a way, because B Long demonstrates everything and you copy it. And that's how you learn.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
He doesn't really make any attempt to create a group dynamic in his workshops. It's quite bleak, really. You're just kind of on your own, you don't know anyone, and you have to fail. And I don't think I was very good the first time round.
Is this B Long or Gaulier you're talking about?
B Long, but they kept saying, "Oh, Philippe Gaulier would love you, would love you." And so I then did I did Le Jeu with Gaulier, and I think he did like me a lot, and in fact he and I are very good friends. And then I did quite a lot of courses with him over the years, which he would invite me to do, so I was very lucky. And then I kind of felt, yes, I did find all the things that Gaulier said were right about me is all the things that my drama school hadn't liked about me. So it was a very, yeah, God, I can be a performer and just be me and not be pretending I'm not me. I can just be me. And so Gaulier was brilliant. And they both asked me, Pierre B Long asked me to be in a show. He said, "Oh, I'd like to direct you in a show." And Gaulier said the same thing. And I ended up doing both shows. I was directed by both of them in touring shows, which was a really amazing experience and a very difficult one.
Yeah, because you mentioned the Gaulier show being a flop initially, although it became more successful later on. What was that like to have a show directed by him and then have such a struggle with it?
Well, it was very painful, actually, because, Philippe is very high profile, and we opened this show at the Edinburgh Fringe, at the Assembly Rooms in the ballroom, which is a major venue there. And it just didn't, we'd had such fun in rehearsals, but it just kind of didn't really come together. And it was a very good cast. Mick Barnfather was in it, and Toby Sedgwick was in it, but it just, I think it was very pure clown. We didn't really have any material. The whole show was about people deciding how they were going to take boxes out from inside, from underneath a table tennis table. And some people said that was 15 minutes of material stretched out to an hour and a quarter. And it did feel like that some nights. But if we just all found our pleasure together on a night, everything worked. And it went from being the worst thing anyone had ever seen to being exactly the same show, the funniest thing anyone had ever seen. And there were such vital lessons learned, I think, for me doing that show. I mean, I don't tend to do shows that are just about coming on and finding a pleasure and not doing anything. My shows are full of business and routines and choreography, and so that if you do have a bad night, it's still funny.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I learned from that show. And of course, working with Philippe was amazing. Amazing to work with him as a student and also then as an actor in that actor-director relationship. So it was, and that kicked off my directing career, because people saw me in that show and said, "Oh, would you direct us?" And people like Us Boys, I think, had seen me in the show, and they said, "Oh, would you come and direct us?" And initially I said no. I didn't think I'd be able to direct anything. I wouldn't know how to do it, but I did do it, and then I went on to direct 3 of their shows.
That's amazing. And so you kind of went from performing quite quickly into directing, and sort of, was that, in that move, did that feel like you'd found something that was your place? Like you wanted to be the director, and this was a...
I didn't. No, I didn't at first. I mean, I used to say to people when I accepted directing jobs, I would say, "Look, I'll do this, but I'm an actor, and if I get a job, I will go, and you'll have to take me on that basis, because I will just leave."
Sure.
So they'll say, no, we'll take the risk. And we'll just keep our fingers crossed you don't get any work. And in actual fact, I was at a point in my life when the work was starting to get a bit patchy. And I was thinking, oh, why is this happening? Why is that? And because I'd worked a lot when I was in my 20s. And as I got into my 30s, I started thinking, what kind of career am I having? And so this felt like a really good second bite of the apple, and I enjoyed it. Although there was a crossover period of about 5 years when I was doing acting jobs and directing jobs together. And, some people still managed to have great careers, like Paul Hunter, for instance, from Told by an Idiot. he has a great career as a director, and he also has kept his acting career going. And I might be a little bit jealous about that, but I really do love my job, and I'm very happy to be a director. But I think of myself as an actor who directs, and not, you know,
that makes you a really good director in a way, because you have that sort of awareness of really what it's like to be an actor and that groundedness. Do you when you're directing, do you find yourself demonstrating, like, do it this way and getting up and kind of being the performer briefly, or do you try to kind of really let people find their own take and their own way to do things?
Well, that's a very good question. It depends on which is the most effective way of communicating what you want. So if I think that the actor will benefit from watching me do something, if I think, look, this is something particular, I'll just do this, and then they can copy it or try to reinterpret or whatever, I will do that. Otherwise, I would most usually try to suggest something and see what they did with it. But I do demonstrate quite a lot, I do. But I also think it's very important for the performer to feel ownership of the material that they're performing. So I'm not a, no, you have to do it more like me person. I don't think so. The most important thing is that the performer feels comfortable with the material, and yeah, so I do demonstrate a bit, but
yeah, it must be tricky though, because you're like, I always think of Jacques Tati and you know, these stories of how, and probably quite a lot of film comedy directors, I think maybe Chaplin was like this as well, that really meticulous about how everybody around them were performing their roles, and would basically say, you have to do it exactly like this, watch me. And they do, you know, he would step into that character and do it, and then expect the actor to do it exactly like that. And I know that when I'm directing sometimes, and you watch performers, and you just know that if they just had done that a little bit sooner, or waited a little bit longer, or done it in a slightly different rhythm, that they would have got the laugh, or that the rhythm would have worked a little bit better. And you just want to be able to change that, but presumably you can't at a certain point.
Well, you absolutely can. I do direct in absolute minutiae, which most performers really love, because, you know, when you're a performer, you get a lot of input, don't you? You get input from your director, you get input from a director, it's all output, but performers get input, and they like that. And in fact, I remember when I was doing One Man, Two Guvnors, there's a plant in the audience, and I mean, that is a spoiler, but I think everyone knows about this plant now because it became quite a famous character. But I directed this very closely in terms of how many breaths to take before a slight incline of the head. You know, when to, I mean, I directed it all absolute beat by beat, breath by breath, because it was so important that the audience didn't know that this was a plant.
Yeah.
And any kind of bitter performer instinct that crept out of that performer would have given it away. And it was so important for the maximum laughs and enjoyment that people really thought it was, you know, a member of the audience.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's, on the night of the Tony Awards on Broadway, I was watching the matinee, and James Corden, instead of going to the woman in the audience, came to me instead and grabbed me and pulled me up, and I had to do the entire performance that I directed so carefully, and the cast were in both wings looking at me to see if I would get it wrong. I didn't. I remembered all the beats, but it's just as well I did. And it was a very strange experience because you had to be so unaware of these gales of laughter that were coming towards you. You just had to literally do nothing at all.
Yeah.
But follow the beats of when to look round, when to bend down, when to, you know, and it was fun doing that. It was a lot of fun, and I'm pleased I remembered it all.
That's an acting job. It seems to me more than a clowning job. That ability to be a convincing audience member.
Yes. Although I do think that a lot of clowns are very good actors as well.
Mm.
You know, there's such a crossover. I mean, not all clowns can act in such a way that they can carry a storyline. That's not their personality particularly, but I like clowns who can act, and I like actors who can clown. It's really, in theatre, it's, you know, it's a great combination.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for that. So, okay, somebody has actually posted this. Do you want to see this? It's the last line from Titus Andronicus.
Oh,
You were
my God.
Lucius, presumably.
I cannot remember, because, you know, this was in 1981. So I don't know, to order well estate that. Oh, I don't even recognize that. But yeah, that must have been what it was. But thank you for that. Thank you.
Maybe it's the rhyme that's funny. Then afterwards to order well the state, that like events may ne'er it ruinate. It. Maybe they thought you were saying urinate.
Yes, maybe I did accidentally say urinate. Who knows?
That would be brilliant. That events may ne'er urinate.
Yeah. Oh, what a load of gobbledygook that is when everyone's dead.
I know, it is an odd thing. Well, there are some odd lines in Shakespeare.
Yes.
Like in King Lear, when they're all dying and somebody says, help, help. And somebody else says, what kind of help?
Yeah. Could be obvious, really. An ambulance.
Yeah, that would be helpful. So, well, let's remove that. Oh, Chad from the Red Nose Factory says, what is the right kind of director for you?
The right kind of director for me, I suppose I like, I think I'm very collaborative, and I do think that I like a director to be very interested in the performers. I myself am more interested in the performers than I am in the text, because, you know, Philippe Gaulier always said he doesn't go to the theatre to see Hamlet. He goes to the theatre to see Charlie de Flager playing Hamlet, because Hamlet he can sit at home in a chair and read. And it's the performers, it's the performances that are the thing with theatre, and I absolutely believe that to be true. So I like directors who are very interested in what the actors are good at, what they're, particularly with clown, what they're bad at, because it can be really funny to just not be trying to prove that you're efficient or competent, but just allow that great stupidity to come out. So yeah, I like a director who's more interested in the performance than the text.
Yeah.
But I told you that when I went for an interview at the Royal Court in London, I was out the door 5 minutes later, because they're a real writers' theatre, so they thought that was horrible.
And you said something like that about the performer. Yeah.
Well, I said with me it was, yes.
Yeah.
And
they're really like, there's the door, mate. Sorry.
Why have you wasted our time?
Well, it was only 5 minutes. I mean,
it was, yeah, and they needed to be told after all. Maybe they'll come round.
Yeah, I mean, you know, things change. Vogue, fashions. Maybe they'll realize that it's not all about words after all.
Yeah, I hope so.
At some point, maybe in about 50 years from now.
I mean, Shakespeare used to write for particular performers. You know, he used to base characters on his friends in the company. So that's my excuse anyway. It's good enough for Shakespeare.
So if anybody has any more questions, please do throw them into the comments. It's great to be able to, you know, to spread it broadly and not be all about me. Although I've got a million questions to ask you, Cal. So I'm quite happy also asking my questions, satisfying my curiosity. So just touching on what you just said, what is clown for you? What does that mean?
I think probably I'm just going to come up with a cliche here, but I think that it's the simplest, most vulnerable, and most egotistical part of who you are. So, yeah, it's your stupidity. I mean, I always ask performers I'm working with them who I'm working with, what is it about you that your friends make fun of behind your back? Do you know what that is? Because that's probably some clue to maybe what your clown is. And I actually think that the clown is a very honest. The clown isn't a great actor. The clown is the personality of that person. A part of the personality, a view of the personality of that person. And I think in that sense that for me, there's a clown at the center of every great performance, because every great performance, usually you can see the actor behind it. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah,
but
no, I like that.
That like non-acting, just being. I think that's clown. And also you have to be someone who's very interested in the audience. You have to, if you're in a tragedy, you don't really need to worry about whether the audience are there or not. You can pat yourself on the back afterwards and you can decide they loved it or they hated it, but you won't really know. But with comedy, the comedy is a conversation. The audience is the other member of the cast. A comedy performance is a conversation between the performers and the audience, and it's so interactive, and so you have to be really interested in your audience, and do they like you? What do they think of you?
Yeah. And how do you learn that? Because you took the Gaulier workshop and a number of courses with him, and of course he has this famously kind of sink or swim kind of pedagogy, I suppose, where you fail a lot, and he likes some people and doesn't like other people, and about it. He's really brutally honest. And I'm interested in how you as a director sort of translate some of that you learn through Gaulier or other clown pedagogies into your work as a director. I mean, do you have to help performers with some of that? Do you do exercises with them? Do you do any clown training with them, or is it all just sort of as a matter of staging the play that they learn the clowning?
I do some games with them, yes. I mean, I don't go into as much workshoppy stuff as a clown teacher would, but I do think that the rules of the clown are often within these games. I mean, Philippe plays this game called Mr. Hit, where it's basically a game of tag, and if you get touched, you have to call out somebody else's name in the room, and there are various rules around that. And if you allow your mind to wander, you'll fail and you'll be out sitting watching, which nobody wants to do, because the game is fun. You want to be in the game. And I think, and I play that game a lot with performers, because certainly, you might have a degree from Cambridge or Oxford or Harvard or something. You might be an incredibly intelligent and eloquent person, and you want to be a clown. Where do you find that stupidity? And how do you stop your mind? The answer is you've got to keep your mind just on that one simple task you've been asked to do, and not let your mind wander elsewhere. And that's a really good way into finding the clown. And this Mr. Hit game, it just demonstrates it. Because if I think too much about, who's the next one who's going to be hit, or you start analyzing it, you will be out. So there are some games, but Philippe never explains anything. And he just lets you see, by other people's failures, by your own failures, by other people's successes, and by your own successes, he lets you put it together. And if you don't put it together, then that's your tough shit, really. I mean, that's how it goes.
And I guess as a director, being hired to work with certain actors, you can't really do that. So there has to be another way of helping them realize when they're not putting it together.
Yes, but I sort of feel I do know how it works, and I am able to get people to that point where they are being simple and stupid and funny. I think that's something I do know how to do.
And do you tend to do it more through, like, are you a harsh kind of director, do you think?
No,
Like
no, no,
telling
no.
people.
No, I'm really nice. And performers like working with me because they feel very safe, I believe, and I'm very supportive. And I tend to, at my grand old age, I tend to be trusted, and trust is a big thing. If you're asking someone to leave their comfort zone, you know, and I do say to people, do not worry. I swear I will not let you be bad in this. It's my responsibility that you are brilliant, and I will make sure that happens. And yeah, and I love, and I love doing that. I really do. No, I'm very nurturing. Actually, that is my. Not all comedy directors are, but I am. I'm very kind.
So and this reminds me of what you were saying earlier about what you learned from that show, where you were it was that pure clowning with no safety net really to make sure it was funny every time. So it sounds like in a way when you direct, you're trying to get both those elements of that, helping the person find their beautiful clown space, but also making sure that they have the tools and the structure and the choreography, I suppose, around them, so that they can always be successful.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, and then it's also so much work is done when you go to see previews, and you can sense the audience. They're not responding to that person, and you know why. And you can just say to that person, you know, you were a bit arrogant last night, or you weren't interested enough, or that you were a bit nervous. And so there are games you can play. I mean, I used to, in the Gaulier Show, I used to play this game with myself that because I got very, you know, because we'd had so many, you know, difficult nights, it was hard to find my pleasure. I used to play this game with myself before I went on stage. I used to pretend that it was my birthday and that everyone in the audience had come to the show that night to celebrate my birthday. And that just gave me a little lift of feeling a bit special.
Yeah.
And that helped with the pleasure. But when I was doing Gaulier, but you know, it's not easy. It's the hardest thing to do, because comedians, if you have good material, people will laugh. But clowns don't have good material. You know, clowns often have bad material, and that's why it's. And so it's really is. It's very hard, and I wanted to learn the hard way. And when I was still an actor, I used to work at this music hall in the West End, which had been going for 60, 70 years. And you would get they give you these Victorian songs, which weren't really any very funny anymore, but you'd have to go on stage with these songs and with the pianist and perform them and get laughs. And when I was doing Gaulier, I really tried to apply what I was learning about clown into these performances I was doing at the Players. And I decided that I was not going to do anything until I'd got my first laugh. And it was really painful. And I would walk out and not do anything. And some nights it was really painful. And I was just standing there and everyone was going, what? You know, but other nights you could walk out and the laughs would just come. And I just kind of learned to do that by, you know, the comedians always say that they learnt their trade in the working men's clubs in the north of England, where they died in the working men's clubs. They died here. And that was kind of that Gaulier tour, and working at the Players and deciding that I wasn't going to open my mouth till I got a laugh was my way through that. I think also a very good way to learn to be a clown is to do street theatre, which I never did. But you have to stop people walking away. You have to get people to like you, otherwise you won't get the pound coin. And I think it's probably, going to doing a workshop with somebody brilliant like Mick Barnfather or Philippe Gaulier or Pierre B Long or whoever, or Aitor Bassari. Spymonkey do fantastic clown workshops.
Yeah.
But I think street is that's the deep end.
Yeah.
It's really doing.
So I'm curious, Cal, about the difference between directing your own show or being the director of a show, which you do quite a bit, and then going into other shows or movies and being the physical comedy director, because you were the physical comedy director for the One Man Two Guvnors, and then for a number of Hollywood movies, and you're also working with Cirque as the sort of comedy director of particular acts. And how is that transition? Which do you prefer, and what are the sort of pitfalls or challenges of having to direct the comedy within a larger structure that you don't necessarily have control over?
Well, I wouldn't do that anymore, because I mean, I did One Man Two Guvnors because I wanted to work at the National, and the only way they were going to let me in the door was to work on the show with Nicholas Heitner, because it was a very he wanted an outrageous sort of clowny updated version of The Servant of Two Masters, and hadn't done anything like that himself. So he got me in to create a comic vocabulary for the show and to create all the physical comedy sequences and work with the performers. So I have an extremely big footprint on that show, and which Nick has very generously always acknowledged, and has said that, you know, much of what is funny about it was my work. But I didn't really get on that well with him when we were doing it. I don't think people knew quite how well that was going to be received, and I did know, because I knew that the national audience really did want to laugh at something genuinely hilariously funny, and not the titters that you get from you know, well-written comedy, but just people falling down. So I've done it a couple of other times, and one of the times I was sacked, Andrew Lloyd Webber asked me to go and work on School of Rock on Broadway, but there was a lot of tension, because as I've said, actors do like working with me, and if they're asking me for notes and not the other director, then there's a tension, and I do feel that and there was a big tension in New York between me and the other director, and they just fired me, and which was really awful. But also, you know, I didn't have autonomy, so I wanted that show to be much funnier than it was, and it's a fun show. But I wanted it to be the funniest show on Broadway, because I always want everything to be the funniest show everyone has ever seen. That's all I care about. I just want it to be the funniest. I want to be funny, my last show, funnier than Show Next Door. I'm quite competitive in that way.
Yeah.
I don't do that, but in the movies, I don't mind doing it.
The
movies.
A second there.
Yeah, am I back now? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not, the movies aren't really my oeuvre, although I have been asked to direct movies, and I'm thinking about it, but I'm wary, because I think I'm better at live stuff, but I don't mind doing it. I mean, some films you go in and they just want you to work out, you know, a comedy fight or something like that.
Yeah.
Other movies like Spiderman 2 or Paddington, they want basically all of the physical comedy in the film, and so I created a lot of that stuff in both the Paddington movies, and a lot of the physical comedy in Spider-Man 2 as well. And the directors of both those films are absolutely brilliant, and we're very happy for me to kind of have free reign in a way.
So Jeff asks this question in relation to that. Paddington Bear did some great clowning. One example was when he was working as a window cleaner. Did you do any work on his comedy with the animators?
Yes, of course, because one of the things I did on Paddington was I was one of the motion capture people on it. There were two motion capture people, and one, interestingly, was Javier Marthan from People Like Us, who I'd worked with.
Oh, cool.
Years ago. And he and I were kind of doing the physical reference of the character together. So some of the facial expressions are Javier's, some are mine, and we kind of shared all that stuff. So, and certainly the window cleaning was one that we worked out very carefully in the rehearsal between us, and the animators were there videoing us And then it was funny because when I went to the edit, you'd see Paddington doing something, and suddenly the screen would wipe, and there's you doing it, and then the bear's on top of you, and it was they overlaid the bear on top of what I was doing or what Javier was doing.
That's mad.
So it was really a fascinating experience. I mean, the bathroom sequence in Paddington 1, I kind of did most of that on my first day there. They just said, we want to do a bathroom sequence, and they'd set up this little set with a sink and a loo and stuff and a chain and some ropes, and they said, knock yourself out, which I did, and that it all ended up in the movie.
I hope you didn't knock yourself out.
Not literally, but I was I did feel I was a little bit old to be doing that, and so I said, look, I don't want to be the motion capture guy, get someone else, and we got Javier in. So, and then the two of us kind of worked together on it.
I think you have the best job in the world, Cal. I've decided.
Sometimes too, yeah.
It's incredible.
Sometimes.
How much fun just to be told, create a comedy bathroom scene, and we'll capture it and turn it into this animation, and then you kind of get to watch Paddington Bear doing what you just did.
I know, but that was that film, and the Spider-Man film as well. I loved it because the director of Spider-Man, Mark Webb, which I just think is the best name to direct a Spider-Man film, he would say to me, "Oh, look, you direct this scene." So, which was great. I mean, they gave me a lot of leeway. And even because I was always demonstrating things, they even said, "Oh, you've got to be in the movie. You've got to be in the movie. Come on." And I said, "Okay." And they said, "Write yourself a little part. Go on, write yourself a part." So I wrote the part for this guy who watches Spider-Man, like, I don't know, I think he was tearing off his clothes and running through a tunnel. And I did a double take. And they said, no. They said, "No, that's not a big enough part. No. So they said, "Would you like to play Principal Conway?" And so I played this role. It was actually, a lot of it was cut down just because of the edit. A lot of it ended up touching the floor, but it was very nice. And the part that I'd written for myself, they gave to Stan Lee.
Wow.
That was his last ever appearance. It was in that little role.
Gosh. So have you got anything coming up sort of in the near future, movie-wise? I know you're going to do Giffords. Have you got anything beyond that?
Yeah, I'm working on a project with Alexander Armstrong, which I'm not really supposed to talk about at the moment, but it's something to do with classical music. I'm doing that. We might be doing a Giffords Christmas show. I'm doing a revival of my English National Opera production of Iolanthe next year. And I'm also doing a really beautiful operetta with music by Ivan Novello, which I've been wanting to do for a long time. And more Gifford Circus along the way. And I've got a big new show which I'm being talked to about for Broadway for 2024. So I'm really pleased that because 2020 I thought I'd retired. I mean, I did a few little things. I directed an episode of Inside Number 9. I did a bit of work on the Matilda movie. I did a Gifford Circus show, socially distanced version, but that wasn't a lot of work for a whole year. And I was thinking, God, is this it? But I'm happy to say, touch wood, that the work has come back with a vengeance. So I just hope the audiences keep, because my show in Las Vegas at the Venetian, the Atomic Saloon show, that had to close for 7 months. And it opened up again last May, and you couldn't get into the States last May. So I was directing the reopening of it via Zoom, which I absolutely hated.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
And when we were able to fly, after I opened another opera last year at E&O, and then I immediately went over to Vegas to spend a month with the show, just getting it back on the rails.
I want to ask you about Giffords in a second, but just a question here from April. She says, Philippe speaks of having hundreds of silly ideas every day. What can one practice to exercise your funny bone alone without relying on being in a workshop setting?
Yeah, I think amusing yourself is actually quite important. and looking for things that you find funny. I mean, I think it comes naturally to a lot of us that we just do find a lot of things funny. one thing I do, which I'm sure is going to get me punched in the face one day, is if I'm walking down the street and someone's coming the opposite way and they've got a slightly odd face, as they pass me, I feel compelled to mimic it and just to make whatever face they've got, to do my version of it. And it's very silly. And one day the husband's going to be walking a few feet behind, he's going to smash me in the face. But I watch people all the time.
Yeah.
And I suppose in my mind is always just kind of going, oh, wouldn't it be funny if that happened to this person, or this person met that person, and whatever. And I'm a great tease with my friends, and they tease me back. But I'm very, I think joshing around with your friends is a really good way to keep your sense of humor buoyant while you're not actually in practice with a rehearsal or a teacher or something.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's I feel like it's quite a British thing, that, although maybe not, but I sort of think there's a certain Britishness of that making fun, teasing each other, and it's often sort of verbal, the verbal comedy.
Yes.
Yeah. Although now I'm thinking about it, that in Latin America they do that a lot as well.
Yeah, they do. I mean, and also Australians.
Yeah.
Australians are very boisterous with each other, very verbally boisterous.
Yeah. So there we go. It exists everywhere, probably.
Yes, I think so.
So let's kind of talk about Giffords to finish up, because we haven't really, and it's sort of, well, I don't want to say the pinnacle of your career, but as you said, it's like the longest running association, and I think probably longer than most people have experienced in their lives as a kind of association. And it's been remarkable, really. And you've created some just amazing, beautiful shows. And I guess I'm interested in the circus as a context for you to work in, as opposed to the theatre, which I guess is, other than Giffords, mostly where you work, in theatres and a little bit in the movies recently.
Yes.
But so what is it like? Has it been like, and how is it different to direct for a circus? What are the considerations there?
Well, Gifford, I mean, you mentioned earlier on I'd worked for Cirque du Soleil, and I was there for a couple of years. 20 years ago, I made the clown routines in Varekai and also in Zumanity, which is the show they have where it actually just closed after 17 years or something in Vegas because of COVID. But Cirque isn't a particularly conducive place to make comedy, and it was a real struggle to make funny things there, although I think the Varekai numbers are considered to be very funny and the audiences loved them, but they were very different from the Cirque aesthetic. I wouldn't let the designer design the costumes for the clowns. I wouldn't let the makeup girl put all the silly yellow and blue makeup on their faces. I just these are people, and it was an aesthetic clash from the rest of the show, which the Cirque du Soleil people absolutely hated, and they could not wait for the audience to come in and boo us so that we could be fired. But that didn't happen. The audience came in and the roof lifted off. These numbers were very, very successful for them. And so then they asked me to work in Las Vegas, and it was the same old stuff, them being very doubtful and thinking that's not funny and it's not poetic enough. And they keep thinking the clowns need to be poetic. And the one thing a clown needs to be is funny. It doesn't need to be anything else. It can be poetic.
Yeah.
Be violent, but it has to be funny. But the funny isn't really a priority for them, I don't think. And at Giffords, and this is the thing about autonomy, because when I joined Giffords, Nell Gifford, the late Nell Gifford, gave me carte blanche to make whatever shows I wanted to. We would think up the themes together, but I wrote and directed the shows and cast them, and it's a great team there, and I really genuinely love as family, the people I work with there.
Yeah.
And I've also been really lucky that Tweedy has stuck around so long, because Tweedy goes back at Gifford's even further than I do. He's been working there for most of Gifford's existence. I've done half the shows in their existence, and he's done like 3/4 of them. But he's stuck around all these years, and he's a gift. He constantly learns new acts. The audience love him. He's got a big following. He's genuinely funny and multi-skilled.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, he's doing this. He's joining in this year on a riding act with one of the most dangerous riding acts in the world. And he will be on the back of the horse as well, falling off and leaping about and getting his trousers pulled down and all those circusy things. So, but I make those shows at Gifford's kind of about whatever the theme is. I really make the shows about the people who are in them.
Yeah.
Once again, it's being interested in people's personalities and who can this juggler, can he be funny as well as being skilled? Yes. Okay. You're going to be this character. You're going to be that character. So at Gifford's, there is a very, very strong comedic theatrical narrative that runs through.
Yeah.
But what I don't do is try to crowbar ideas into the acts. The acts are just the acts, and they're informed by what has happened in the transitions.
So the people bringing the acts, and you have to work with those acts as they stand, or you
we book a Risley act, we book a Russian swing act, we book a swing tease, we book a high wire, we book a juggler, and we'll try. I mean, last year we did an Irish theme. I think it's certainly one of the best shows I've ever done for Gifford's. It was called the Huli, and it meant a lot to me. I'm an Irishman, and this is a really beautiful and lyrical show, which extra lyrical actually, because Nell had died, and it was the first full show since her death, and she and I were very close. But it was an Irish show without any Irish people in it, because I couldn't get Irish dancers. I couldn't get Irish performers for the show. So like we had an Irish dancer. One of the Irish dancers came from Belarus. So I just said that he was from Belarus, and everyone's accepted. And then, but the other Irish dancer was from Little Rock, Arkansas. So it was quite strange. And this is the lovely thing about circus. You just get this incredible international mix of people. They always find a way to communicate. Over the last few years, I think among the performers, Spanish has been the dominant language, because we always have a contingent of Cubans. Now, Cubans have all the skills that the Chinese and Russians have, but they bring this incredible joy.
Are there Mexicans in this year's show?
1.5. Yeah. In fact, there's a Mexican juggler. His first name's Gordon, and and he's brilliant. I mean, the Mexican jugglers are the best. They are incredible, really high energy. And there's another girl called Adriana Duch, who I worked with years ago in Mexico. I directed a show with her in Mexico, and she's a brilliant clown. And she's coming over to be a kind of high status clown to Tweedy's servant. So, but other people the other people in the show are Hispanic. Not necessarily Mexican, but
so with Gifford's, it's like taking these acts that you're presented with and then finding sort of a way to weave them together. Presumably Tweedy is key usually to that, like weaving them together, because he can just do anything and duck in and out of all the other acts.
I mean, I always kind of have two storylines which interchange with each other, because there's the show storyline, and then there's Tweedy's storyline, because I always feel Tweedy as the clown is best served if he's not really a part of the mainstream storyline, but he's somebody from the outside who's trying to break in to that storyline somehow. So he and when I say storyline, basically these are themes with a resolve rather than an intricate storyline, because you don't really want to listen to too much talking in a circus. I always have big ideas about having scenes between people and people talking to each other, but the audience don't want to see that. So I find more physical ways of telling the story. Yet Tweedy's storyline is normally, can I be in the circus? No, you can't go away. And then at the end, yes, of course, you're brilliant. We love you. You can join the circus. And it's 100 different versions of that storyline is what I usually do with Tweedy. It works
presumably this year there's going to be a lot less audience interaction.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I one of the charming things about Giffords is that the audience, a good third of the audience, climb over the ring boxes and dance with the company at the end of the show. They all dance together, and it's a very joyful part. And we haven't been able to do that since 2019. But this year, apparently, because I was asking our marvelous Kelly Rumbelow, who helps with she does the casting with me and everything, and she does all the contracts, and she's really Mrs. Circus, and she checked it out, and I think we're allowed to have audience interaction. Like, we can get somebody into the ring. If we want to do a knife throwing act with an audience member, we could do that. If we want to get one victim, but I think we will probably, they'll have to wear a mask if they do that. But I don't think the audience will be wearing masks this year. I don't think so. I don't think they'll want to. I don't know.
Great. Well, that would
sure.
be nice.
We're going to try as soon as we can get the audience interaction back. We will, because in 2020 and 2021 they weren't really even allowed to shout. We weren't allowed to ask them to, what if you see something or call out things. We were asking them to move their feet instead. But they were shouting, but we didn't feel we could ask them to, because that was a way of spreading the disease.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things we were talking about before we came on, was just that how comedy maybe is going to change, or the sort of limits and rules around the what you can do with an audience seems to might potentially change as a result of COVID. And I was wondering if maybe as a closing question, do you feel that over the years, not just with COVID, but over the years, that comedy has changed? What's funny has changed, or what's allowed?
No, the thing is, well, that's different, isn't it? Because I don't think funny has changed. But interesting, my friend's son was staying with us for a few weeks, and he said, "Oh, show me an old film that you think is funny." And so I got out Airplane, because this guy was 18. He'd never seen Airplane before he was born.
Yeah.
And he could not believe how politically incorrect that film was, basically from start to finish.
Yeah.
But it was still funny, and he was still laughing at it, but he was quite disapproving of it. And I certainly think, I mean, the opera that I've just done, I did an HMS Pinafore, a Gilbert and Sullivan opera for English National Opera last year. Went very well indeed. But I had an old lady character in it, who I wanted to do some physical comedy. And this was played beautifully by Flick Ferdinando, who some of you may know. But she was a bent old lady with a little wobbly stick and the glasses, a real kind of, classic old granny, but dressed in a beautiful crinoline. And she was much loved by the rest of the cast on stage, and they all helped her if she was bumping into the wrong thing or coming on at the wrong time. And during at the end of Act 1, the curtains squashed her as they came down, and then in Act 2 she fell down a trap, and the audience could see it coming. They knew the trap was open, they could see her walking, and this roll of laughter started, and she fell down the trap, and there's this roar of laughter, really lovely laughs that are wonderful to hear in an opera house. But the critics went bananas about it, and they said I was ageist, and they said it was a grotesque caricature mocking the old and infirm. And it's only 10 years ago since we did One Man, Two Guvnors. And there was an old man in that, played by Tom Eden, who was nominated for a Tony Award for his performance as this old man. Tom was in his 30s, and this old man had palsy. He ran into doors. He got jumped on. He got knocked down the stairs 3 times. He got knocked out deliberately with a cricket bat. and the audience are all falling about. But I wonder, can we do that now? Because my old aunt Minge, as we called her in HMS Pinafore, was very, very gentle and benign, and there was no violence involved. And yet now the audience loved her, but most of the critics took exception to it. And I do think we're walking on eggshells now, because making fun is making fun of. You're making fun of somebody or of something. And as long as you're not doing it in a malicious way, then we should be allowed to do that. So I think it's very hard now to know, because I just thought, God, batty old lady, no one's going to complain about that. But it was an issue. It was definitely an issue. And the theatre was saying, oh, take her out, but I said, no, I won't take her out.
Interestingly, presumably it's not the little old ladies who are complaining about that comedy. It's the, fairly youthful press.
Yes, I think so.
Who are taking exception to it. Well, I hope political correctness doesn't stop us being able to be funny.
No, there'll always be a way. And this may be a phase, but I think we're stuck in it for a while. But there's a lot of there's shows opening on Broadway, Mrs. Doubtfire, that quite rightly has to walk on eggshells about not offending certain minorities and all the rest of it. And I think a lot of that stuff, we have to listen to what people are saying. But because we absolutely must, it's our duty to. But I hope that people don't lose their sense of humor entirely, because I had to cut 2 scenes from Coop. We went to Tampa a couple of years ago, and I cut 2 scenes which I just didn't feel would be accepted now. And they were really lovely, really funny, gentle, warm scenes. But so we'll see.
Well, maybe the most important thing is that we're talking about it.
Yes, exactly.
And even when we do have to cut things out and censor, that we don't just sort of do it and forget and not talk about it, but it's a conversation between adults who have different
there's so much misunderstanding about it, because when I had 2 a company of Cubans were supposed to arrive for Giffords, and out of 9 of them, only 2 got there because the visas and problems and whatever. And I had these 2 Cuban guys, and I knew them they'd been with us the year before. And I said, look, don't worry, you can still be in the show. I'll make a clown routine with you. But I got letters saying that I was putting people of color in an unfavorable light because they were stupid characters. And I had the same kind of letters when I had a little person in the show who was a professional clown. They did not like that he was getting laughs. And these weren't other little people writing, and these were the worried well, the middle class, the white middle class people. And I think I think this issue has been raised again recently, because I think Peter Dinklage objected to the fact that there were little people in Snow White and 7 Dwarfs. And now I think all that's happened is he's put those people out of work that were going to do the motion capture for the film. I don't know. I know there's backlash from other little people saying, God, we're performers, please don't take our. And the thing about a clown is that you laugh at a clown. With a comedian, and you laugh at a clown. And if you have a disability and you're a clown, then that is going to be that's going to cause issues, and that's a shame.
It's a really complex issue that we could talk about all night. Actually, it's a really interesting one. But we are kind of out of time, so I feel like maybe we have to let that one rest, at least until the next conversation. So well, I just want to say thank you so much, Cal, and thanks for giving us your time and sharing this amazing insight that you have. And as I said before, you definitely have the best job in the world.
Thank you.
Extremely envious. I think it must be amazing. So yeah, and thanks everyone for watching and for your comments and questions. And so I'm going to say goodbye, Cal, and do a quick closing. So thank you again so much, and hope the rest of hope the show goes well that you're working on now.
Yes, I'm sure it will. It's on the right track. So
yeah, fantastic. Okay,
right.
Cheerio. See you again soon.
Peace. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks everyone for joining another Clownversation. Wasn't that awesome? Such a cool, insightful conversation with CAL MCCRYSTAL. Thanks again to him. And next week, I'm going to be talking to Shannon Colcutt, who is a really wonderful clown from the same original clown school that I went through with Sue Morrison in Canada. And she's had an amazing career, worked with Cirque du Soleil and a number of other companies. And she works at the Celebration Barn with Avner, teachers there as well. So she's going to be awesome next week. Don't miss it, Shannon Colcutt. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please just hit that subscribe button now. Be very grateful for that. Check out the clown reaction videos there on the YouTube channel. Check out my Awaken Your Clown Spirit course coming up next weekend. And have an awesome rest of your week and weekend, and keep clowning. Bye for now.